Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Today I am going to be reviewing a medieval ghost story that has been retold by Dan Jones in the audiobook, The Tale of the Tailor and the Three Dead Kings. This audiobook is about an hour long, but it did take me about 2 days to listen to because I listened to it in 2 chunks, and it was very enjoyable. I had a really good time reading it, but I wanted to discuss the plot of this book and who may or may not enjoy this audiobook in this book review. So let's get started. This is a recovered ghost story from the Middle Ages, and it is narrated by Dan Jones, or it's at least written by Dan Jones. The retelling is. So this isn't a faithful rendition of what was stored on the original ghost story, but it was retold, and at the very beginning of this book, the author talks about what he kept and what he altered in this book, so you have a good sense of how much is original. This ghost story was found and translated by M.R. James in 1922. There's actually a really good article on this that I'm going to link in the description of this video because I think the article explains things quite well. But basically, there were plenty of texts that discuss theological or other important things in the library of Byland Abbey. And someone found some blank pages at the back of the book and wrote down about 12 ghost stories. And so these are surviving medieval ghost stories from the 15th century that reflect the local time and the local place that these stories occurred in. And they were rediscovered by M.R. James, and he published them. And I wouldn't say they're popular because I hadn't heard of them before stumbling across this audiobook, but it's very intriguing that Dan Jones took one of these and made it into a more modern rendition. It is quite short, so it's not a very long story, and it's distinctly medieval in flavor. So if you like horror and you're used to modern tellings, or even anything from like the 1800s upward, it does sound very, very different. But I think that, at least for me, I found it enjoyable as long as I understood going into it that it was going to be a distinctly medieval story. So it's not a horror story for a modern reader set in the medieval world. It is truly a medieval ghost story that is being retold and reworked for a modern audience. Let's get into the story. The story revolves around a tailor by the name of Snowball who, and when we start this story, is riding between 2 villages. He has been tasked with repairing a cloak and he needs to get on it. So he's riding his horse home and he is attacked by a raven. Following this attack, the raven morphs into a dog and lets him know, hey, I am a ghost. Snowball is scared and very nervous about this whole encounter, and the raven / dog, very scary dog, says, I'm actually the ghost of a man who was buried in your village. You know him. He was a man who was considered a sinner. He died without the blessing of the church, or I don't know exactly. He wasn't buried correctly or in Christian tradition because he was viewed as a sinner, so now he is not at rest. And he says, because you summoned me, and I don't know if it's exactly clear how he was summoned, because you summoned me, I am in control of you. So what you need to now do is find someone who's willing to give me the peace, the blessing, the proper burial, the absolution, I'm not sure what the right word is here, but the right blessing to have my body be at peace and in correct alignment with the church. So Snowball is terrified and he's going to do what he says, and then all of a sudden he wakes up. It's been a week later and he's lying at home, so he's been transported home. Something that's really interesting right away is I feel like in normal ghost stories, when you summon up the ghost, you expect to be in charge of the ghost. You are in charge of the ghost. And in this, it's very clear, or to me it was clear, that the ghost seemed to have a lot of power over Snowball the tailor instead of the other way around. And this comes up later in the story. Snowball then has to go through this adventure of finding some priests or someone who's going to be able to provide him with the right ritual to lay this ghost at rest. And he's able to acquire this through some work. He, due to his fear of this ghost and wanting protection, has to build a magic circle, something that's come in a lot of other books that I have read on people using magic in the Middle Ages. But he builds a circle for protection where he's able to protect himself from this spooky creature, and he's able to hopefully do the right things to lay this individual at rest. And through this process, he also learns of other individuals who are also wandering the world, and he sees, these things are around him. They won't harm him, but other things that need to be done to lay other people to rest, although it's not really clear if this is really Snowball's problem. Snowball's just responsible for the one that the dog raven that he is supposed to be laying to rest. So that is the gist of the story. Snowball trying to get this ghost off his back, essentially lay it to rest. He was an individual who sinned too much in life and I guess didn't confess and didn't get his soul right with God. There's an emphasis, at least from the link that I'm going to provide, that some of these ghost stories or many of these ghost stories are focused on the idea of dying right, dying with your soul right, in the right state with God, which would have been a very great concern to people in the Middle Ages, where the Catholic Church had a lot of power. It would have been very bad to have been buried without the blessing of the Catholic Church or not within consecrated grounds. So that would be a real fear. And throughout this whole book, there's definitely a medieval flavor. So again, if you're used to modern horror or modern spooky tales, this isn't going to be it. But I think Dan Jones and the audiobook did a good enough job building that atmosphere where I felt like, ooh, a little tingle. And I feel like that's a point of connection where you can feel the same little spook that someone from the Middle Ages would have felt writing this story down on the back of a book, which is just such an interesting and relatable idea that you have some blank pages in the back that maybe you scribble something on, and that has now survived and been turned into something for the modern reader, which I really enjoyed. So if you're interested in trying out a medieval ghost tale, then maybe try checking out The Tale of the Tailor and Three Dead Kings. I think going into the audiobook with the right idea and conception of what you're getting into is going to be really important, but if you go in with the right idea that you're reading something distinctly medieval as opposed to a modern telling, or it is a modern retelling, but without the modern flair, I think you'll be set up with the right expectations to enjoy this book and enjoy what Dan Jones has done in this book. If you've read this book or listened to it, please put it in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on this book as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.